unmuted myself. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another webinar. This one is hosted by TVDM consultants and Poena of MeetingPal. We're very lucky this morning to have Poena give us a demonstration of MeetingPal. A lot of you will know him and have worked with his app before. The session is recorded and a copy of the recording is going to be made available on our website, and Poena will have a copy of it as well. We'll also be doing a webinar with Nama and a couple of the other guys that you recognize in the industry tomorrow, where Poena will also be presenting on the voting app. So if you are aware of anybody that hasn't been able to attend this morning, please do let them know about that session that's happening tomorrow at 11 o'clock, also via Zoom. Without further ado, Poena, I'm going to hand over to you. The session is all about you, and then I will monitor the chat function. If you have any questions, please pop it in the chat function, and then obviously we'll take some Q&A afterwards as well. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Zelena, I trust you'll be able to admit people in as they come on board.
I will do so.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm just trying to set myself Zelena, can you spotlight me, please?
Oh gosh, you're asking me to do something I have no idea how
to do. Go to more.
Under participants?
Yes, under participants.
Next door to you, more spotlight for everyone?
No, you just need to spotlight me. That is a bit of a problem. Okay, there you go. Now, okay. All right, can you see me, everybody?
Yes. You learned something new. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for making the time. I see it's a bit jittery. I hope I'm coming through properly on the back end side. So then thank you, Zelena, for setting it up and taking the time to introduce MeetingPal to the market. Just by way of introduction, I myself are an owner and trustee. I do own a development company, and we have a couple of our pals, MeetingPals, the pals on the call. And as such, what we are doing is that we have developed an application that will assist, especially with remote voting. I don't know, I'm getting a bit of, am I jittery, or am I just lagging on my side?
I can hear you perfectly, Poena, just the picture is a little bit jittery.
Okay, let me do this. I'm gonna stop this thing. I'm gonna, please just bear with me.
Sure. The sound is clear though.
Yes, I think I've got a problem with my, let me just do this. I see it's a bit. So I'm just going to swap over onto another camera.
For those of you that aren't aware, Poena's traveling at the moment, so unfortunately he doesn't have his normal fancy setup of about 5 screens or more, as well as a perfect internet connection.
That's perfect. Thank you. I think you should be able to see me now, and I should not be dithering. All right, so thank you. All right, so again, just by way of introduction, I'm not a managing agent. I was just the managing or the chairperson of a self-managed complex with COVID, when COVID hit. I did design an application in 2016 when the Act changes. I presented to a couple of managing agents on the principle, and I was told, no, man, we will always meet in person. This is a family business. Everybody likes to participate, and on that basis, we will always meet in person. So I did shelve the design, and then when with the lockdown, as I say, I was the chairperson, and I realized that I had to run my meeting on a virtual basis, and the company, my development company, we've always been virtualized since 2012, so we just took it as a natural stage for us to run meetings remotely. I then got the guys to build the system for us, and hence this is where we are now. We have grown it considerably. And I am going to share my screen, and I'm not going to do a death by PowerPoint. So typically what I would like to just do is just to explain to you the principle behind MeetingPal. And I am going to share my screen with you on the back end. Can you see it, my screen?
Yes, we can, Poena. Perfect.
Okay. Right. So there's two portions to MeetingPal. There's the backend side where the administrators, typically your managing agents or your trustees for self-managed complexes, would define and set up the meeting. And then this black box over here is typically what it will represent on a mobile phone. So the application runs on Apple and Android devices, as well as on a web browser on a computer, either Apple and or Windows machines, even Linux machines, based on the fact that it runs in a web browser. So on that basis, it then allows for us to target basically everybody in terms of the population and have them participate in meetings and casting the votes. As you are familiar with the Act in terms of the voting has to be done by number and value, the vote calculation needs to be done based on that, and hence we have then designed the system to take that into consideration. And based on the fact that we are fully committed to compliance, we have developed a system to be in line with the Act as it requires. So furthermore, we have found that especially that older generation and people joining not so many meetings on a daily basis prefer to have their voting card or their voting app on a mobile phone so that they can access it while still having Zoom running on one screen or on the computer, and then they can join Zoom on the computer, and they don't need to get lost between tabs and between screens and or windows if they switch between the two sides of it. So I'm briefly going to go through a demonstration of the back-end side, and that will culminate in how it will represent on the front end. I am going to address a couple of issues that I've deemed to be rather important. Typically, why not use polls or SurveyMonkey and aspects like that to set up remote voting? And I'll cover them as we step through it. If there are any questions, please raise your hand and or unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'm easy to address issues and no questions as we step through that. All right, so without further ado, typically when as I say, as an administrator, I can see all my live meetings, the meetings that's currently underway, and I've got my upcoming events. On this side, I will use a different profile to log in with, and I've also got, as I said, Ivanka, Ricky, Michael, and some of my pals also that will be voting remotely to show you how the results will come in on the back end so that while the meeting is underway, you'll be able to figure out, well, not figure out, but see what's happening. So in terms of setting up a meeting, typically, first of all, what you can do is you can set up profiles for yourself. And the profiles are where you can set up a profile that specifically manages and governs the configuration of the system as it relates to body corporates, homeowners associations, or directors meetings or trustee meetings. We've run normal company directors meetings as well as pension fund administrators. Anything that where it's required to have a remote voting or a voting in pockets where people then would vote in certain areas, like in a region, and that will then roll up into another region, so we can accommodate a fairly complex voting for section. We also support mixed schemes where we might have commercial and residential body corporates. like hotel groups typically would have, the hotel would own a set number of rooms. The other rooms would be set out as sectional titles, which I will rent back and then let out on behalf of the owners. But their body, in terms of their constitution or their conduct rules, certain aspects are to be voted on only by commercial and some by residential only. So we do allow for that. So this is typically where you can then set up and manage your back end in terms of typically for body corporates. What is the proxy limit? Do you allow manual votes, yes or no? Do you allow abstention votes to be displayed on the front end? Do you count individual votes? Typically, homeowners associations will allow for counting of individual votes. So they don't have one vote irrespective of the number of units that you own. They will have their votes will be counted based on the number of units that they own. And then you can do a yes, no, and. So I'm not going to go through all of this. I'll explain them as I go through the system. But typically you can define a profile. And then when you do, after you've defined your profile, and then when you start to create a meeting, you can create the meeting by setting up the structure at the back end. We do have two licensing models. We have a token-based licensing model where it's a per-use model where you buy a token and you would set up a meeting once-off and run the meeting. The token does include adjourned meetings. So if you don't form a quorum on the first run, we do support the adjourned meetings as part of that token. So you don't need to buy a separate token, which perhaps it's not good business, but we think it's fair for specifically for our owners and our clients to not have to buy that. And also what we do is we strongly recommend, and perhaps that's one point that I can point out at this point in time, is that we do strongly recommend people to use a dry run, especially if it's new owners or elderly group. I'm running, we have one client, a company that runs 9 retirement homes. For them, we run a couple of dry runs to get the people more familiarized with how to cast their votes, how to use Teams and or Zoom on the one hand, on the other hand to cast their votes. So the token also includes a dry run meeting, so you can set up a dry run meeting on that basis. So you can either then set it up as a token, or we also have a licensing model where you can buy a license for a complex for an annual fee with unlimited meetings, trustee meetings, round robin decisions. We do lots of round robin meetings as well, where we typically for reticulation on the installation of fiber, and you need to get approval to dug or to set up the reticulation on the common property. So we can allow for all of that, but the complex then can have an unlimited amount of meetings for that year, being trustee meetings, directors meetings for HOAs, special meetings, round robin, and so you can then set up. For the demonstration, I'm going to just use a token, and what I will then do is I will provide the token or the name of the meeting, AGM demo. So I'll just give it a name. I can give it a further description. I'll get into that just now. Typically, and then I would typically set up the date when the meeting will happen. I can schedule it for in the future and saying this meeting will happen at say 6 o'clock, which I've not seen, but I've seen a couple of 9 o'clocks, but not a 6 o'clock. But let's say, for instance, I want to set it for 6 o'clock. So you can then set it for 6 o'clock in the morning, or most probably 6 o'clock in the afternoon would be a better time. Or in my case, because I'm going to do the demo now, I'm going to set the time for now. So I'm going to schedule the meeting to happen now. We can then also use the default agenda for the SDSM as per the layout of the Act. What we do find is that we have built it in based again on a compliance proficiency. But what we do find is that most body corporates and all managing agents have got their own cadence and their own structure. And they would not like to vary their behavior in terms of how they conduct their meetings. purely because owners are familiarized with the way that they run meetings. So in that case, we do also allow them to set up their own agenda. For now, I'm just going to set up my own agenda, and I can then from there also identify which template I use. And that template, remember, is the configuration of the system at the back end in terms of how do I treat abstentions and so I'm just going to use the standard one. I presume for today it's mostly body corporates, but the same principle will apply, and you can make the changes as you go through the meeting if you run a HOA or a trustee or whatever meeting. So I'm creating the meeting, and what will happen is on the meeting, I now have the structure of the meeting. So I have the details of the meeting. I can again confirm my proxy limits. I can then display what should be displayed on the front end and to the owners. Do I display it as units or owners? Typically for body corporates, it's units, owners. HOAs refer to their units as IRVs and or stands. They don't refer to a unit typically. In which case we then would have a different view that we then will have on that. So you can then set that up, and then again you can also set some values at the bottom. But for now, I've already predefined it based on my template that I'm using. I can now go and say notice is given, and I do spelling mistakes on purpose. So you can see it's a live demo. Not because I suck at typing. Notice is given, and I can then format the text in terms of color. Let's make that blue, and then and the size and stuff like that, so that you can format the mail. And what will happen is that when we do send out the invite to owners via the mail, and or display the information on the app, everything that we set up in terms of logos, colors, font sizes will be what will be displayed in the app, as well as if you do push out a email via the system, you can then just format your email accordingly. So you've got a rich text editor, what we call rich text editor, so you can put up a very nicely formatted, colorful logos and an email that you can send through the system. And again, it's up to the managing agent and or the body corporate whether they prefer to have the emails being sent as a MeetingPal invite, or whether they still want to run it independently and send the invites as what they would have normally done. But we allow for the system allows for both of those actions to happen on that at that point. So when you do want to run a dry run meeting, after you've created the meeting and set up the meeting, you just send us an email, and we as administrators have got the ability to duplicate a meeting as well, and so that we can then create a meeting for you to run a separate dry run meeting based on the structure for the actual meeting that will happen in a week or two's time or a month's time. So we allow you then to set up a dummy meeting or use that same meeting, and then for you to then run a trial run or a dry run, a test, whatever you want to call it, so that your owners and your users can get familiarized with the system. We also at the back end, we also, especially when you buy an annual license as a body corporate, and you intend to move from one managing agent, or you move from one managing agent to another during the year, again, we can assign the license to another managing agent or administrator. So if you let us know that the remainder of the period, we will then assign onto another body or managing agent, or if you want to self-manage it yourself, that's also fine. So if I then look at my agenda, I can upload an agenda from an Excel spreadsheet, or I can create an agenda, and I'm going to keep it simple. Approve 2020 AGM minutes. Let's say, for instance, that would be one of our, I'm not going to go into the time allocated, so I'll just create that one. So I know I'll have a normal that, and on that. And then typically I want to show you how we then manage elect trustees. Because what will happen in a lot of cases, and we do assist many meetings, what we've seen is that typically you do not have enough nominations. You need to get nominations from the floor. And even though we set up the structure and take away a lot of pressure for the administrator in preparing for the meeting, but during the meeting, you might have to change wording on a resolution, or extend, typically, as I say, get more nominations from the floor, in which case you can then do that dynamically while the meeting is underway. We also then have our invitation, the invite email, what it will look like. You can preview the mail and see this is the text that I've just added. What we have is we do have a structure where once you've uploaded your owners list, we will then automatically replace the Dear John Smith, the name, with Dear Poena, Dear Owner 1, Dear Owner 2, whatever, and we'll provide them with a link where they can do an Rsvp. What we do find is that in terms of the POPI Act, it's typically very difficult for managing agents to schedule a meeting and then have everybody's details available once they schedule the meeting. Owners do get a bit upset about that. So in this case, what we do is we allow you to click on the link, and from the link we can then take you into the system so you can do an Rsvp, add it to your diary. So it's only applicable to yourself, especially the corporate clients, professional owners. They prefer to have it in their diary so they can have a proper view on their diary. So by clicking on the Rsvp, it will then take you into the system, and then you can then register and then add it to your diary. We also have a standard text with the download instructions, how to download MeetingPal, how to use it. And just getting back to the meeting invite itself, you can change the wording invite to, and wherever we have this curly brackets, that is system generated and or system replaceable text that we will then replace from the system. So if you have meeting title, when I send out the invite now, it will then actually say TVD AGM demo. So invited to, and we'll then replace that text with that. Also the attendee name, when it's scheduled, and things like that. You can format it. You can typically over years where you would add your Zoom or your Teams or your Skype link or your link. So we do run with many systems at this point in time in terms of the support that we have at the back end. So on that basis, this is typically where you can then set up your system. You can also, if you do delete some of it, you can see and copy the text across that. You can see what it will look like on that side. So that's the meeting invite. Meeting downloads is typically where you upload and attach all your board packs. So let's let me go into here, and I've got a PDF here, which is not related, but it's a PDF file so that you can then set it up. And I want to show you what it will look like in the invite as well as on the app. So we try to keep everything contained. I say this with a lot of respect. Owners do attend the meetings, but then they also query they've not received certain documents. Please send them during the meeting, or they request a copy of the budget, the levy schedule, and things like that. So by having it also as part of the app, it allows us then for them to just literally just go and click and download the document, access the document in the place. Right. So now we're getting to the crux of it, where we're going to the units. So for us to add the units, you can go and create units one by one. It's all fair if you're running a small scheme of say up to say 10 owners. If you do run a fairly large scheme, it's important, or it's easier to upload an Excel spreadsheet. I do have an Excel spreadsheet open, which I will then just quickly drag into this screen. So typically what we do require is an Excel sheet that's containing the following information somewhere in the sheet. So we don't prescribe the format, the structure of it. We're just saying we want somewhere to identify the owner. The unit number, sorry, the unit number. This could be cell phone numbers, which we're not going to use. Then we want to know who are the owners of the units, and then some other useless information that's not pertinent to the meeting. On the body corporate, the PQ value, so we can then do the value calculation, and then the email addresses. We also find that many owners do have not only one email address, but they have many email addresses, so we do cater for all those email addresses. And once we get into the system, we can then see which one of those email addresses will be the voting power to execute voting on behalf of that specific unit. So I've got a couple of email addresses here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just literally going to go and I'm going to pick up that specific Excel spreadsheet, and I'll choose it, and I think I call it that. So all I do now is I go and say, just click, where will I find the unit name? I will find the unit name, unit number, and the column A. Where will I find the owner name? That is in column C. Where will I find the email column? That looks like it's in column F. And the vote column is the PQ column is column E. As I said, if you have mixed schemes, you can then set up certain owners as commercial, residential. If you run HOAs, again, you might have different voting schemes and or powers, and you can then set up those groups and then have different votings for different groups. We do calculate the quorums for the groups individually, because typically those conduct rules also require then that you have a quorum for the whole body corporate, but then there's a quorum for the commercial side, quorum for your residential, and so on that basis you can then set up your groups. I'm not going to set up groups, but we will then on that basis. So now I've now imported that list, and it's immediately now split up by units. It's created all my owners for me with their PQ values, as well as based on those email addresses, it will then identify specific invitees that we can then set up the meeting for. I just want to point out one thing that you need to also check is that the moment you upload it, and it is a body corporate, the first test for yourself is to make sure that your unit total value equals 100, because that is what it should be. The total PQ value should add up to 100. So I'm happy I've at least got that. It's not applicable to HOAs. On HOAs, it needs to add up to the number of Rs or stands that you've got. So just take that into consideration, but that's your first test that you can check. Yes, I've uploaded my information correctly. And then on the top here, if I then go into a unit with multiple owners, I can then go and say, which one of these owners are going to be the voting authority, who's got the power of authority to cast their vote. So, and I can just go like, okay, this is the person or that person, and it can only be one, so I can save that in. And we do find that quite often when we get into the meeting, even though we use email addresses that we have on record for the body corporate, when we get into a meeting, owners will join through either their business accounts or a different email address. And in that case, you can then add those linked email addresses, an additional email address, and then set the voting to whoever can cast their vote at that point. So that's just typically the backing. I can confirm, so every owner can then confirm their PQ values. And as I say, the first test is that it must add up to 100. I also have then my list of owners. We do also cater for owners that's got multiple units. So in this case, I've got an owner with a number of units. So they will only have one vote in number, but the value vote will be a combination of the aggregation or the total of their PQ values will then determine the value vote. So that is the principle around that. Also, what I can point out is if an owner owns many units in a complex, and the ownership is, we think that it's John that owns it, but in fact it's Trust 1, Trust 2, and Trust 3. They are deemed to be separate legal entities, and based on that, based on the ownership, they will have 3 voting cards and not 1 voting card based on that principle. So we need to also take that into consideration. So that's the owners, the invitees. I'm not going to go into the groups. As I said, we can create groups. You can create groups here. I can point out one thing that I did forget to mention is I do have on this list, I also have an outside proxy holder with a value of 0. So if anybody joins the meeting from an external point and you want to add them, you can create the invite for them. You can add their name and their email addresses, but they won't have a voting power because they will not have. You can't add a PQ value to them. It can only be done through the units and owners side. So on this side, if I bring, say, Zelinda in on a consultation for me when I run a meeting, I can send an invite to her, but she won't have any voting powers assigned to her, or I can assign a proxy to her if I do prefer. So on that basis, this is typically what we can then do. The next step is then for us to, I can also, I'll get into suspensions just now. So I'm going to just send out the invites to my team and myself, so that what it will do is we'll then go into the back end and then it will fire off all the emails for us on the systems, so that I can see, and I can also, let me just check, it's gone through, and I can at the bottom here see when was email sent to that owner, which email addresses, and so we've got all of that. And on the front end, I should shortly get, okay, so I do have one. I just want to open it up and bring it across onto this side. So typically this is what the invite will look like. As you've seen in the preview, when the meeting is going to happen, the documents, there's the download document. The document itself is not attached to the email, so we don't have any problems with the size limits on email accounts. So you can then download the meeting on all the documents on that side. So this is typically with all the instructions and the formatting as we've set it up that will come through. All right, so that's the back end, and the invites have now gone out. We then need to define our resolutions, and typically we can also upload resolutions, or in my case, I'm just going to add a resolution, and I'm going to call this resolution approve 2020 AGM held at the pool. Funny how many meetings happen at the pool, but so I'm going to then add a meeting at the pool. And then I can say, I can give it a wording and an and then let's say approve minutes. Don't worry about the spelling, as circulated on date. Any case, so we've got that, and then I need to link it to an agenda item. And this is where it will pop up in the app under which agenda as we step through the meeting. It will then open up on that agenda item. So I'm going to say I'm going to approve it there. And then I've got 2 types of resolutions that we can vote on. The one is a yes, no, the old show of hands principle, where I can say yes, no, or there's a multi-select, and that's typically on the trustees election. And I can then also identify the resolution as either ordinary, special, or unanimous. And we then will take into consideration the back end, the rules pertaining to special, say, for instance, that 75% of the owners need to vote in favor with a normal quorum, unanimous, and 80%, and everybody, and so all those rules are built into the back end to assist you in managing your resolution. So I've got that one with all the fraud spelling in there. And let me add one more resolution, and this one will be the elect trustees doing here. Any case, and then typically this one I will link into my election of my trustees, and now I will have my multi-select. So first of all, I can then add a name. I've got Jan Span and Sue. Those are my nominations that I have before the meeting. I can save the changes, and I'll explain to you the message that's popping up there now. So I'll save it, and then normally point 12, if you follow the standard agenda, point 12 on the agenda is where you need to determine the number of trustees. Once you've determined the number of trustees over here, you can then come back and say the number of trustees determined by the previous vote is set to 2. And then if I then save that again, and this will then prohibit people on the front end to cast votes for more than 2. So I will never have a spoiled ballot where typically, for instance, we have 10 nominations, we decide on 7, and one client goes and tick, 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 all 10 of them, and we just don't know which one to go for. So we then limit and ensure that you don't have a spoiled voting paper. On that basis, then you can set that up. So that's typically how we will do the backend. Then we can then assign proxies. So I'm going to add a proxy. I'm going to give a proxy. Let me give this proxy to I think that one. If it's not that way, I'm going to, but in any case, so I can add a proxy. I'll add another proxy. Let's say, for instance, this person is also giving it to, I want to specifically use Ricky now again. And now we're going and say, okay, we have another person that wants to assign their proxy to Ricky. But now it says to me that Ricky is already carrying too many proxies. This person has reassigned their proxy, so they cannot accept proxies. They will not be prohibited at the meeting. So I can then based on that, manage that. So let me then give this proxy. So I want to use, let's say, for instance, this person. I'm going to assign a proxy to Victor. So, okay, I've got my 2 proxy holders at the back end. Michael, I'm not going to give you a proxy. I think you are registered, so you should be able to check. I can quickly just check here and just check if I do a search. I can search by either the name or the number, the unit number, or wherever that text comes will be available. So now I've got my proxies. I can also set up suspensions. So suspensions, I can do suspensions on owners with judgments against them or in HOAs that's on arrears, but for BCs not. It's just if you've got a judgment against you that we can set suspensions. The suspensions will only be applicable to ordinary resolutions. For special and unanimous resolutions, we open up again the suspension so you can cast your vote on any of those. So, all right, so let me then go into my back end, and before I'm going to go there, I'm going to join the meeting on this side. Press the spell. So I'm going to log in, and on here I can now see that I've got an upcoming event for this meeting that I've been set to attend, but I think I need to just give myself a proxy here quickly. Let me add a proxy for that one to outside proxy or that one. So I'll just add a proxy there so that at least I can show you how this person votes. All right, so there I've got my proxies, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the status of the meeting. Up to now, the meeting was closed. Now I can open the meeting. I'll set the status to open. Immediately, it will now pop into the position where they can join the live meeting. It will now be a live meeting. And what I want to do is at the back end here, when they join the meeting, you can see I can now at the back end see already who has joined the meeting. So as people join the meeting, I can see that they've joined the meeting and whether they can and can't vote. So typically on the front end, if I carry a proxy, I do get a notice that I am carrying a proxy has been assigned to me, and that I need to cast my vote in accordance with the proxy's instructions. I say, yeah, I'm happy, I'll do that. And then I will then also be signed in. So we can see the number of owners, the people that has attended, as well as at the bottom here, we can now see whether we do actually have a quorum based on the number of units that has now joined. So By signing in, I can have a number of units. It automatically calculates my unit or my quorum values for me. So I can see I'm at 40%. So this meeting can carry on. I can also see at the back end, typically, which owners can and can't vote. So typically, if I do find that this person's got a query there that they can't vote, and it's most probably because Poena at Sysbis is not set to be the voting power. So if I go to the unit, I can see Poena at Sysbis is not set to be the voting power. Now I can set that, and if I go back, I can now see that they can vote. This person is an outside proxy holder. They don't own any units, so they won't be able to vote on anything unless they carry a proxy. So, but they have signed in. I've signed in via as on behalf of this owner via proxy. So it now shows who signed in. So the attendance register is also built up at the back end for us on that basis. All right, so now what we are going to do is I'm going to open the voting, and for that to happen is I'm going to go to the back end and say I want to open the voting. The moment I click open voting, you'll notice that I do have a pop-up message popping up here and telling me that I have a vote to cast, and I can now start casting my votes. And let me just, again, on this side, I'll show you what's happening at the back end. Okay, now that my team is casting their votes, you can see that dynamically, as they cast their votes, the yes, no's votes are coming in, and I can see that. I will ignore abstentions. So if anybody does click an abstention, we will ignore that, and I'm going to cast my vote for yes now. I just waited for them. Somebody's changed their mind, so I'm going to cast my vote for yes. My vote has just been added. At the bottom end, at the back end as well, we can see who has casted their votes and what did they cast. What was the votes that they brought out. That's important for record purposes. This record does get written away in the database. So if anybody wants to come back to the body corporate in the next 6 years, they're welcome to do that. We do retain the record of their vote, and we then will have an immediate calculation of the number of yes votes, the number of no votes, the value vote, and the percentage of owners that were in attendance and what they voted. And at the back end also, the app pings the owners to make sure that we maintain a quorum throughout the meeting. Whenever we step through every agenda item, we can then identify our quorum requirements. Are we in quorum requirements, yes or no? So that's what's happening at the back end here. I can dynamically, if you do want, you can see if I have my abstentions as a separate vote. Which, okay, there's an abstention. Thank you for the pal that made the abstention. So you'll see that it will then reflect as a separate vote. Homeowners associations, you can do it as yes or no, or in this case, I'm just going to ignore it. Whatever the people vote to the back end as abstentions, in terms of the STSM, we will just ignore that. So what will happen, what I can also point out at this point in time is, say for instance, somebody say, hold on, we need to change the wording. So we want to say that subject to paragraph 3.2, value to change to Rand 10,000. Say for instance, we made a typo, and they say we will approve it subject to these changes. Then what will happen is, if I now go and I save these changes, effectively it becomes a new vote. What will happen is it will now delete all the votes that have been casted, so I can say yes, and now it's still again now awaiting votes. And if I then go again into my results, it would have cleared the results. Thank you, pals. If you can please, there they go. Now it's a new vote. They can confirm their votes and cast their votes on that basis. So I'm going to go also on my side and just update my vote. So there's the votes up to the point where I can now go and say, okay, I'm happy with the results. I am going to announce the results. Now and again, now it depends on the managing agents. Some of them just close the results on this side. And they specifically just do not, they read out the results verbally. I prefer to go and say, I want to freeze the results. And the moment I freeze the results, nobody can no longer come back, change the wording, and or cast another vote. So I can open the vote technically on this side and have somebody cast a vote, but if I go freeze the results, nobody can now, I can't edit this. If I want to edit it, I can't edit it, it's now fixed. So it's been written away as a record, and immediately on the app, the results are displayed immediately. So it's calculated dynamically the back end, pushed to the front end. The moment you freeze the results with the changes in the wording, the fraud spelling, everything like that, it is then written into the front. I can also, at this point in time, we also recommend that you email your votes to all your participants so that they have a record of the vote that they've just casted. So they will get an email from MeetingPal saying to them, let me just open up one. Sorry, I don't know what I've done with that. There we go. So they can get a confirmation of the votes that they've just cast. So nobody can tamper with it. The managing agent, the administrator, once it's locked, you get a record of your voting, and you've casted your votes. So everything is then sent to you at the back end, so that you have full-on confirmation on that you have voted, and that's a position. So I'm just going to open up another one, the election of trustees. So typically, if I just minimize this one on those, we step through the agenda, we get to the position where we need to cast a vote on the election of trustees. I open the vote, and now if I then click on it, I can now cast my vote as an owner. Who's the owner, the details. I can go, let me just go in the back end here. So you can see I can go and Jan Sue, but now I've already casted my vote for 2. I cannot elect another one. I have to go, I want to change it to Sue. And then you can, it automatically dynamically rank the nominations. And if, for instance, we do, as I said, we do get a position where we go like, hold on, we want to have another nomination. If you, depending on the chairperson, if they want to allow another nomination and they want to add an option and say Harvey, and let's make it then 3, just to show that it's dynamically. So the voting is open now. Harvey is immediately set to the front end. I can then go into election for Harvey as well, so people can now select Harvey, but now it's limited to 3. So that's in essence the back end and the front end, how it correlates, how it works in conjunction with each other. And then lastly, you as an owner or as an administrator, you can download your attendance register. So I'm not going to close, so I can download the attendance register. It will download the attendance register for me now. I'm not going to do that. I can also get a download of the full meeting of all the records, all the attendees, all the votes casted. I can also, under my resolutions, download all the results for all the votes in one record, and it will build it into a specific format that I see that owners do prefer to use, where they have let me just open it up, where it spreads it out, where you can see all your votes. And let me just open that. So you can see typically there it is, which owner, what was their votes. On this resolution, they voted yes, and who did they voted for on that side. So that's that spreadsheet that I see on the sectional title group is going around. So we populate it for you automatically, the backend. You can then also use this as your spreadsheet. You can do a full-on download, as I say, of the minutes. Speaking of minutes, you can capture your minutes at the back end to contain a full-on record, so you can add a discussion ensued, discussed and you save your changes. It will then be on the front end. Then you can, if you want to add an action item, we edit your action, who's to do what by when, what's the conclusion, good old minutes taking, and then from there you can then download it as a Word document, circulate it between your trustees within the 7-day period. Once everybody is happy, you go email it to owners, and it pushes out the minutes to your owners. Lastly, what I want to just show is this is not available to you at the back end, but this is just an assurance for owners and for managing agents and or users that every time somebody makes a decision and or interacts with the system, we do pick up the audit trail at the back end, so we can comply and confirm that it was this person that made this decision. So it ties up with the proxies, ties up with the resolutions, the tenants register, as well as all the buttons you've clicked, the votes. So while the voting is open, you can go yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, up to the point where the chairperson is saying, I'm going to close the votes. Up to that point, when they close or freeze the results, whatever your last vote was will be the vote that will be submitted and counted. So that's the system at the back end. In terms of not using polls, by now you can see that the problem that you have with polls is it's just a yes, no. Or you can have multiple selects, but you can't have proxies. We do not have values associated to your vote. And that's typically one of the problems that one can face with the polls, to use polls within Zoom and or Teams. The facilities are there, but unfortunately it does not account for that. We do have the ability, especially on for mixed schemes, or not mixed schemes, mixed meetings. If you're having a meeting, and I've attended a meeting with Alan Levy the other day, we had an in-person meeting, 80 people in a church hall, as well as remote meeting. In that case, what you can do is then everybody still walks into the meeting with their cell phones, even though they are meeting in person. We do have the issues of COVID and touch and cleaning, and so you don't want to hand out voting cards and people have to touch them and pens and so them having their voting cards still in their pocket when they enter the physical meeting or a mixed meeting. We can accommodate both mixed in-person meetings and or virtual meetings, all three types of meetings through the principle of you having your voting card in your pocket. I think that's about it. I've run through it. There was a question from Sandra. Can this be merged to another database or accounting system that is BC or managing agents uses? Yes, you can export the data into an Excel format. You get it in Excel format. Depending on the system that you use, you can import it into that. What we do find is that that Excel spreadsheet that I showed, that is normally generated from the managing agent's back-end system, whether it's Pastel or BCM Track or WeConnectYou or whatever system that they're using in the back-end. That Excel spreadsheet is the spreadsheet that they then use to upload and create the resolutions for.
Fantastic. Poena, you mentioned that the managing agent or the trustees could come to you for a period of 6 years to get the record of the vote. Is it possible for the body corporate or managing agent to get that record of the meeting because the Act requires them to keep it for perpetuity along with the minutes?
Yes. So with the download, once they download, we do a full-on extract of that. But if I look at my past meetings, in my list of past meetings, each and every meeting that I've done in the past will typically be this is one of my demo meetings, so I can actually see all my past meetings. So as an owner, the moment you log in and even on this site, everywhere this user or this owner participated, they have full access to their full record. But the body corporate can download a full record of the meeting, and they can then run on the site and then spoeg and plak it into the minutes book as per the Act requirements.
Thank you. Ladies and gents, do we have any questions? You're more than welcome to pop it into the chat function or raise your hand or simply unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Just a quick one. Could we, when setting up the resolutions, use the link to agenda description to autofill the label? It would just make life a lot easier.
The autofill is normally a setup on your, it's a browser setup. So if you set your browser to have an autofill capability, it will then.
No, sorry. I want to use description and the agenda to put in the label, instead of copying and pasting everything, use the link to agenda descriptions to go straight to the label.
It does it for you. If you look at your invite email, over here the description. If you use meeting title, it will add the description for you automatically.
Go to resolutions. Go to resolutions.
Solutions.
Okay. Now you got to go to your edit.
Create a new one.
Oh no,
Yes.
create a new one. No, create a new one. Okay. Now,
Okay, I'll go to a new one. Hello, Ruth.
Hello. So now you're gonna edit. So now what Peter say? No, man. What are you doing there? New resolution.
Oh, it's all
Yeah.
closed.
Oh, it's all closed.
Yeah.
So basically, when you go up there and you fill in your resolution, so what we have to copy and paste in the top line, and then we go link to agenda. So what we're saying is, if we just go link to agenda, why can that not just put it to the top line?
Yes, Michael, you're on the call. If we can do that, that will be great. We can do that.
Yeah, we can add
Just
that.
say
No
it's
problem.
time's money.
Remember, you know Ruth and the managing agents that's using it. All the recommendations, we are constantly working. If you look at our version, we're on build 2.6.78. So every time we do get a recommendation from the managing agents that will help your and will assist you to make your life easy, we're all for it. You know my philosophy, I'm a leigat, so if I can support, I do that.
I can vouch for that. Every time I've come to you with a question, no matter what time, it gets resolved.
I saw on your first page you had manual voting. Do you want to go through that?
So on the manual voting, let me just set that up. So what we typically have is, okay, this meeting's been closed. Oh, that's a problem. And I'm in a past meeting, I could not understand what I'm doing here. And I could not edit that. So if I go into my details, so typically allow manual votes. What you can do is you can then, especially if you find on the old age homes where they sit 5 or whatever together next to a computer, and it's just, remember, this is, I just want to stress one thing. Please do not let common sense go out of the door because we're running in this new virtual world. Please still apply common sense. Are we doing a big voting now? Is my manual votes is now manual votes. There it is. To set up a manual vote, what you can do, and on your unit side, what you can do is you or under your invitees, you can then go and say this is a manual vote. So what will happen is you as the administrator, only the administrator, can go and set a manual vote. Once we open the voting, let me just see it now. I think I've set one, and just let me use my own details. This one I know is definitely, if I set this up to be a manual vote, I think I'm messing it up because I'm also registered, but let's see if it does. There we go. So now you can see that vote that's open, and it will sort out them for you. What is important that you got to then now minute and make sure that your minutes also reflect the verbal and or in your chat session what the owners want you to cast your votes as. So if, say, for instance, owner 12 says, I want Sue, Jan, then on that basis, you can then set that up and cast the votes based on that. And it's important then for you then to have it minuted. We actually have some very interesting ones where we currently have one that's coming up on Saturday, where there are 300 units only 12 attend virtually. The rest are manual votes, and it becomes a nightmare to do the and they still go for paper cards. But then afterwards, for the managing agents, just to go then as they are listed, just to click them and select them and do the manual votes. So that is quick and easy for them.
Fantastic. Poena, we had two other questions, the pricing as well as whether or not it would be able to serve as minutes. So I've answered both of those. Perhaps you just want to comment on the minutes issue. Would the record of the meeting suffice as minutes? My response was, provided that the contents of what is required under the Act is still there, which I know that your system does provide for. So what would that look like? Is it what you showed us a couple of minutes ago?
It will be typically, I can go into my minutes. Oh, man. If I go into my minutes, just bear with me. So if I download it as a Word document, it becomes a normal standard document that you will be able to pick up and realize. It will include all your owners and so it's a normal proper minutes of the and to your point, it depends on what you capture under your discussions, your action points. It would have been as a normal position on that basis. So I've not populated this one, unfortunately. I've just added the first couple of things, but I need to add the votes and then but it will then become a Word document that you can then use in the same. Why we prefer to use minutes, a part of the system, is then again, if you need to go back, your Word document, your PDF file, your votes, your discussions, everything is co-located in one area.
Fantastic. And then one more from my side, we very often find with proxies that whoever has been nominated and has accepted the role of proxy is suddenly unable to attend the meeting. Does the system allow for proxy substitution? I saw that it allows to accept a proxy.
Yes, so it does allow for proxy substitution. So it's like a normal proxy. So where the managing agent also needs to verify the validity of the physical paper proxy, and then from there, substitute it to another person. So if a specific proxy holder is not available, this proxy holder is not available, I can just go and say that this proxy then needs to be assigned to another proxy holder, so I can then substitute it. But again, we do rely heavily again still, and as I say, common sense still prevail. Trustee or your managing agent or your trustees still need to confirm valid nominations, valid proxies. The system, I suppose, we'll get there in 2 or 4 years with artificial intelligence and machine learning. But at this point in time, we can't vouch for that. So hence we pop up and say, listen, you've got to cast your vote accordingly in terms of the instructions, but I still can't test that you are casting your vote as per the proxy.
Okay. Ladies and gents, do we have any other questions? We don't have anything else on the chat function. If you want to unmute yourself or put your hand up.
So on the pricing, before we on the pricing, in recognition of, I see there were 2 more questions. Oh no, just so Edna, the cost is on the website. We do have a separate pricing model for managing agents that we work with. So you're welcome to make contact with me on that. But in recognition for the group and the audience, I will have a special running for TVDM webinar subscribers, where we will give you a 20% discount on the licensing for the month of September. So if you even, yes, Ruth, that includes you as well. I saw your reaction there, but yes, we will. If you use the code TVDM 20, we will provide you with a 20% discount for the month of September for all the owners that has joined us. Thank you, Zelinda.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Poena. That's greatly appreciated. So anybody that attended this morning, we've got record of you. And then when you contact Poena for that, you'll get that discount. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much. Ladies and gents,
So, no, sorry, can I just add one more thing? What I want to just confirm is that if you're a smaller managing agent and you're concerned about the system being daunting to learn, we do provide training as well as support. Unfortunately, we charge an hourly fee for the support. So if you want us to join you on a meeting, support you for the meeting, running the backend, we can do that. But we are always available on my mobile phone, and any of my pals are available on their phones. If you're on a meeting and you get a weird behavior, like people say they can't vote or they can't join the meeting, just remember to open the meeting so people can join the meeting. But we are always available. You're welcome to just give us a call. We can assist, and even to the point where if you're really tied up in a meeting, and we know that it's daunting running a meeting, getting people into Teams and or Zoom, managing the back end, and somebody has got a wrong proxy or wants to reassign a proxy, just we'll hop onto the back end and do it on your behalf for you in support of all our clients.
Fantastic. We can definitely vouch for that. I've been on many meetings where I've simply popped Poena a WhatsApp and 30 seconds later he's on the call. And I think you said not too long ago you were on like 3 or 4 different meetings at one time, the one evening trying to help people. So your support team is absolutely fantastic. Great stuff. So we've got a couple of compliments and thank yous on the chat function. Poena, unless there's anything else from your side, we'll thank everybody for their attendance, and we'll remind everybody to have a look at your website. I've posted your details, your email address, your cell phone number on the chat function, as well as that 20% discount for those that were in attendance this morning. Thank you so much. The presentation, as well as the recording, will be made available on our website, and I'll pop it through to you as well, Poena, to pop on your side too. So unless there's anything else, Poena, anything from your side?
No, I just want to thank everybody. I really appreciate the time that you've made available and just for looking at the system. I appreciate it very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely day further. Keep well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.